Paul McCartney's cover of American rock and roller Jimi Hendrix is an exception to the rule that the Beatles should sound unique, which they did throughout their career. During their brief but captivating career, the Fab Four demonstrated how to first cement one's place in an already popular genre, like pop in the early 1960s, and then use that fame and success to experiment, like with psychedelic, Eastern, and trippy sounds in the late 1960s. For inspiration while they were recording their 1966 album Revolver, McCartney glanced to the other side of the water. Even though they upset bandmate and composer George Harrison, the outcomes were quite beneficial. Though most people think of the Beatles when they hear their signature sound, every one of the Fab Four could play more than one instrument. Even Paul McCartney didn't think of his distinctive Hufner bass as his initial instrument. Although he was playing bass for the sake of the band, McCartney considered himself primarily a guitarist. George Harrison's Taxman was recorded in the studio by the band, and McCartney was able to step into a role that was more comfortable for him. Enjoy McCartney did with Harrison's anti-tax song. Contributing to a song is much simpler when you enjoy the tune to start with. During what McCartney referred to as his first voyage into feedback, the rock and roll mentality prompted him to imagine American rock and roller Jimi Hendrix. A curiosity aside, the band would later become famous for the screaming guitar approach that McCartney had fallen enamored with during their brief time together. The stars seemed to align about 1966, as was typical for the Beatles. Unlike previous instances, George Harrison's band accepted Taxman and used it as the opening track for their 1966 album Revolver. As Jimi Hendrix and other American guitarists used feedback to create a wilder and more intriguing soundscape in their live performances and albums, Paul McCartney observed them. Last but not least, McCartney received priceless guitar guidance from Bluesbreakers guitarist John Mayall, who he happened to be hanging out with at the time. Mayall recommended that McCartney purchase a thin-line hollow-body electric guitar called an Epiphone Casino. There is greater room for sound waves to reverberate and, given enough time, feedback thanks to the guitar's open body chamber and 2 F-holes. A hollow-body guitar is an excellent choice for an artist who wants to intentionally add extra feedback to their sound. That wasn't only the opinion of McCartney and Mayall, though. According to McCartney, I went and bought an Epiphone following his conversation with Mayall. That means I have a shot at getting the Vox amp and hearing nothing but praise. It happened right before George became involved with it. Actually, I don't believe George did become very involved with that type of activity. When George played guitar, he usually kept himself in check. He didn't enjoy constructive criticism. Whatever the case may be, John Lennon and George Harrison were both captivated by McCartney's Epiphone Casino and eventually began playing a similar model. While he was still a member of the Beatles, John Lennon switched out his trademark Rickenbacker 325 for the Casino.